Lesson 38, we learn about the difference between dynamic and stative verbs. Up to this point, most of the verbs that we have learned are dynamic or active. Active is the more traditional way to refer to these verbs, but our authors correctly distinguish the stative from the dynamic. Let's take a look more at what this means. The basic division among verbs is that between dynamic and stative. Dynamic verbs refer to events or movements, such as I hit, or I sat, or I ran. Stative verbs refer to states or qualities, such as I am large, I am tired, or I was heavy, those sorts of things. So those are states of being or qualities. I am smart, or I am dumb. Those are qualities, and those are stative verbs. In Biblical Hebrew, stative verbs are distinct from dynamic verbs in the following ways. So what we're going to learn here is how to tell the difference between a stative verb and a dynamic verb in Hebrew. There are some signs that will help us know. In the Binyan call, stative verbs have different vowel patterns than dynamic verbs. So the stative verb is actually spelled different than the dynamic verb. The dynamic verb, or dynamic perfect in the call third masculine singular, is spelled kametz patak shamar, and this is what we're used to seeing. The stative perfect third masculine singular alternative is either spelled kametz tsere or kametz holam. So if we are working with a stative verb, it is actually going to be spelled in a specific way. And this spelling will let us know that we're dealing with a stative verb. So shamar is a dynamic verb, and it means he guarded. This is an action or an event. He guarded. It could be a specific event. Kaved, he is or was heavy. This is a stative verb, and it is a state or quality. Katon, he is or was small. This, again, is a stative verb. It is a quality. So these stative verbs are actually spelled different than their dynamic kind of verbal brethren here. And the imperfect, the dynamic verbs, are spelled yishmor. We're used to this with the I vowel and the O vowel. Yishmor, he will guard. The stative imperfect is spelled a little bit different. Yikbad. The same I vowel, but instead of an O vowel, we have an A vowel. Here's another example. Yiktan. The A vowel again. He will be heavy. Yikbad. Yiktan, he will be small. So there are two different types of verbs in many languages, English included, the stative and dynamic. In Hebrew, these two different types of verbs are actually spelled different. In English, there's no way to tell. We have memorized them one from the other. In Hebrew, they're actually spelled different, so that is a very helpful thing when we are translating along. It'll help us recognize stative versus active verbs. We also learned that stative verbs only rarely form participles. This is kind of a moot point right now because we actually haven't learned participles. We will in lesson 42. Instead, stative verbs have an adjective form identical to the third masculine singular perfect form. So stative verbs can actually function as adjectives, and they will be modifying their nouns just like other adjectives do, but they look exactly like the third masculine singular perfect form with that vowel pattern. So he was heavy. As an adjective, it's just heavy, such as a heavy man. Ish kaved is a heavy man. Finally, we learned that stative verbs express states or the entrance into a state, i.e. be or become in past, present, or future time. So we don't always know what the time is. That's consistent with what we've learned about verbs. So let's take a look at what this means. V'enei Yisrael kovdu mizokain. And the eyes of Israel were heavy. The eyes of Israel were were heavy from old age. So this is eyes. It's bound with Yisrael. Here's our verb. Were heavy. And the reason they're heavy is from old age. Here's our stative perfect verb. Another example from Genesis 18. V'chatatam ki kovda ma'od. And their sin indeed is very heavy. So here's another example of a stative verb telling us about the state of their being. Stative state. It tells about the state of their being, or of their sin in this example. Genesis 19:13. Ki godla ta'akatam et pnei Adonai. For their outcry has become great before the Lord. So their outcry is being characterized by this stative verb as becoming great. Their cry is so great, and it's come before God. So those are just some examples of how stative verbs can be used in different contexts. Lesson 38 is all about the difference between dynamic and stative verbs. Dynamic verbs refer to events or movements, such as I ran or I hit, and stative verbs, which refer to states or qualities. And this has to do with things like I am large or I am tired. And in Hebrew, unlike in English, Hebrew verbs are spelled in specific ways. Dynamic verbs have a vowel. Stative verbs in the perfect have an a vowel and either an e vowel or an o vowel. Dynamic verbs in the imperfect have their second vowel is either an o vowel or in the imperfect. Dynamic in the stative, the second vowel is an a vowel. So lesson 38, dynamic and stative verbs.